Well, good morning. Good morning. Very good singing out there this morning. I just have an announcement I need to make. May 20th and 21st. I want you to keep those days open, if you could. May 20th and 21st. It's a Saturday and Sunday. It's 2 weeks from now. Next weekend is Mother's Day. That's just a subtle reminder. And then the following weekend is May 20th and 21st. The reason I say that is because a few weeks ago, I had made an announcement that we had a pastoral candidate that had gone before our search committee, and that search committee then passed it on to the elders. At this time, the elders are going to be passing on that potential pastor to you folks. What I mean by that is on Saturday, his pastor Nathan Wesson, his wife Jamie, and his daughter Chloe are going to be coming here on Saturday. And they also have a son, Isaac, and his son, Isaac, will not be coming with them. He had other things going on. But they will be with us on Saturday and Sunday. Now, Saturday night, there's going to be a game night, which you're going to hear about in a minute. And all of you are invited. This is a time to get to know this potential pastor here of our church. Let me just explain the process to you. Let me back up a little bit. The first thing that happens is an application goes to the district. The district then looks at that application and then says, this is somebody that had applied to be a pastor at your church, and we want to present it to you. Our pastoral search committee has an opportunity to review some of this stuff, and then they say, yes, this is a potential candidate that we want the elders to look at. The elders then look at it, and we sat down and we had a video conference with him. He's from Texas. And we had a video conference with him, and after we had met for a few hours with him, we had decided we need to invite him out to our church to have the congregation look at him. So on Saturday evening, this is an opportunity just for an informal gathering for you guys to meet Pastor Nathan Wesson and his wife and daughter, and for him to meet you as well. So that night, please be at your best behavior, because he's going to be observing you. Now on Sunday, Pastor Nathan Wesson will be presenting the service on Sunday morning. That will be the 21st. And then on Sunday evening, we're going to have another dinner. And that dinner is going to be more of a time for question-answer. So the Saturday night is informal, just to kind of get to know him. We can get to see who he is, and then we'll learn more about him from his message on Sunday morning. And then Sunday night, we have a question-answer time. At the conclusion of that, the next few days after that, you, the congregation, are going to be able to give the elders some feedback of what you have seen, whether positive or negative, or any questions you may have that you believe is pertinent. We will look into that. If we have to go back to Pastor Nathan and ask him some questions and get some clarifications, we will do that. You have probably, I think it is 3 days from the conclusion of that weekend, just to get with us. At that point, then, the elders have another discussion. It gets brought before the board, and the board will make a decision if we want to make a formal request for him to be the pastor. At that point, though, we don't go to him. We let the district know that we would like to make a request to have him be a pastor. The district then sends out that offer, that request to him. That being said, that's what the weekend of May 20th and 21st looks like. Donna has a little bit more information on the dinners, both Saturday night and Sunday night.
Hi. Now for the fun part. I have sign-up sheets here. They're going to go up on the bulletin board when we're finished here. I don't know if they're watching, so I'm not going to give away everything that is happening on Saturday night. So you'll read that on the second line of this sign-up sheet. But it is a welcome party / game night. We ask that you bring your favorite game, just like always. We are providing pizza and snacks and desserts and stuff like that. So we encourage everybody, youth to 80, 90, whatever, whoever the oldest one is here. I might be looking at her, but I don't know. Anyway, so that's happening Saturday. There's a sign-up sheet. Both events are going to be at 6 o'clock in the evening. And the second one is Sunday evening. So like Brian said, we'll have church, go home, have a light lunch. We're going to have Mexican food on Sunday night. And so again, you won't need to bring anything other than a special dessert is what's listed on here. And I did put down some suggestions because there are certain things that the Wesson family likes, and also there are certain things that I found are unique to Michigan, such as Mackinac Island fudge, bumpy cake, Superman ice cream, in case anybody didn't know that. I didn't. I threw in cherry pie because of cherries from Michigan up north. So, and then there's a few other suggestions. So it's going to be pretty easy for you guys, just a dessert. So be planning. It would be great if they were homemade and your absolute specialty. But if not, there are items to buy, like that Superman ice cream or bumpy cake. And one other sign-up sheet is going up. I don't want to put this sign-up sheet up, but we will because it's the right thing to do. But we will be saying farewell to two of our favorite families. And anyway, that's going to be June 4th, and you'll find out who they are on the sign-up sheet here. We're going to provide chicken, and gosh. Anyway, and then there's suggestions for what you can bring for food. So on that note, I think that there's another announcement between two lovely ladies. Or he'd kill me if I told you what I was thinking right now, but when he was a little boy, no, never mind.
All right. So we do have more announcements. We have quite a few announcements on our list. Just as a reminder, everything is on the bulletin board. Those sign-up sheets will be on the bulletin board after the service. But we do have another aspect of the candidate coming. We're going to do another 24 hours of prayer. That'll start on May 19th at 1 p.m. and then continue on until Saturday at 1 p.m. So there's a sign-up on the bulletin board. Please put your name down. We want to be a praying church. We want to be a church that puts everything under prayer first and putting God's decisions and God's answers first. So please join us as we pray for our new pastor candidate as he comes to visit and comes to learn more about us, and we learn more about him. More announcements. So, in addition to the other signups on the bulletin board, there is now a sign-up for the VBS 2023. That is June 21st to 23rd. I will fix that. It's on the case. It is a fun VBS. We're excited to bring it back this year and see what we do with that. We don't have any specific positions to sign up for it this time, but if you want to put your name down just as a tentative, then either Sarah or myself will come talk to you, and we want to start working through the final details as we get ready for our VBS this year. Fun with that is it will end at our outdoor service, so make sure you mark your calendar for that as well. The outdoor service is June 25th. So we're hoping everyone that is part of our VBS will be able to join us for that outdoor service as well. The last announcement from me is please don't forget about Prayer and Praise Night tonight. It's a great time to, again, pray and worship together as we want to be a church that involves everything with prayer. But at this time, I'm going to ask Josiah Wilkie. He's going to come up real fast and give a quick update about our Bible quizzing year, and then I'm going to pass it along to a couple more people for additional announcements.
All right, good morning, church family. Yes, we had a great quizzing year this year. We just finished up finals yesterday with a very long day, but we're here now. So we went through the book of Acts this year. We had 4 quizzers. One of them is a graduate as well. And all of our quizzers placed in the top 20 out of more than 40 quizzers. So they did better than half of the field, which is fantastic. And in fact, 2 of our quizzers ended up 11th and 12th for the year. That was Tommy and Levi. So if you see them, or Emma and Katie, definitely give them congratulations. They put in a lot of hard work throughout this whole school year. And then our team ended up 6th for the year, which is, again, great. And I want to give a special thanks to Nick, who helped me coach throughout the year, and Grace and Zach, who were officials and helped everything run smoothly. And last but not least, a big thank you to the parents. Quizzing would not exist without you guys. So if you have any questions about next year, feel free to talk to me.
All right, and our last announcement for today is from Karina to talk about Great Commission, GCF.
So, funny story, when you, realize the day before that you're going to make this announcement and couldn't pawn it off on somebody else and pray for the Lord to lead what you're going to say, sometimes he throws something at you that you don't expect. So I do have an announcement, and I'm going to give that while I try to keep my emotion in check here. So typically in the Christian Missionary Alliance, May is Great Commission Month. Great Commission Day is June 2nd, and at General Council in Spokane, the match for a grant that has been offered up, $360,000. So basically, when you give, that's going to be doubled, and that match will be announced on June 2nd when the CNMA do commission another 50 international workers to go overseas. You'll find a flyer bulletin, out on the bench just outside the door here, and it gives you, and it says 40 plus on here. So since this was printed, we have an additional 10 international workers going out, or whatever that difference was with the 40 plus. But so here's the part that I have been challenged with this morning. And so, y'all know during the last couple months with Peter's heart surgery, it's been a struggle and in and out of the ER. And last week when we came, I remember saying to Mark Wilson, when you're up and down like that and the Lord answers prayer, Zach, you come and you worship. Well, we had another amazing answer to prayer this weekend, and it was not for Peter specifically, but it was for his sister who has been failing in health and caring for Mom, Peter's mom. And there was a terrible fire that went through her county, and they were evacuated, and we got news on Friday night that she had lost the house. And we had been praying when we saw that the lumber yard was on fire relatively right next door. We've been praying that God would protect the house and the fires would go around it. Saturday, we got a call from Beth who said, I just got a call from the landlady and the house is still standing. All the trees around it are burned, but the house is still standing, and someone's going to go check on the condition of the house. So I just share that because I'm here in my heart to worship today, because there are times that we have nothing but prayer, and God just holds us like that prairie hen, covers her chicks with her feathers, and even though she may be burned up, they're still safe. And that does tie back into my announcement, because truly, I am convicted, according to Matthew. Let me see if I can get into my phone here. Sorry about that. According to Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So if you are on our missions committee, I would really encourage you to pick one of these up and just refresh your memory on the designated, undesignated funds and commitment to our Great Commission. If you're on the leadership team, I would encourage you to pick one of these up. If you love Jesus and you want to share his love with others, I would encourage you to pick one of these up. Thank you so much for giving to the Great Commission. Remember, you have all month for the GCF for June 2nd. You can give online, or Leah would be happy to take your check and get that where it needs to go to. Thank you.
Great. Good to hear all those good announcements. Let's stand. Let's welcome each other at this time. The children are dismissed for Children's Church, and we will begin with our service in just a moment. Where did Stephanie and, oh, there you are. They're going. We have some children. We have Nathaniel and Andrew, which are children of Nang and Stephanie. And so I will be introducing them to you as we get started this morning. So I'm not going to tell you the age of Nang. I'm going to let you see if you can figure out with some clues that I will be given to you. So his ethnicity is Hmong, and it's great to have that as a background. He was born and raised, and I thought it was Sheboygan, Michigan, but it was Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So there's a difference there, the S versus the C. So that kind of got me a little bit, piqued my interest. So Nang joined the Navy right after high school, 16 years ago. There's your hint. And he became a cook on a nuclear submarine, which is really interesting. I wonder if he'll talk about that or not. May not be out of the focus. He likes fishing, sports, and he loves treasure hunting. So you'll have to ask him about that after the service. Some of the things he dislikes are spiders, Michigan drivers that are aggressive. I kept thinking, sometimes I can be aggressive, so please. And this is going to tear my wife up. He does not like chocolate. It's incredible. But that's okay. Stephanie is a year younger than Nang, born and raised in California. She loves music and thunderstorms. And I was thinking, are there thunderstorms in Northern California, mid-century? Maybe there is. I kind of don't remember him too much. She'll have to talk about that one. And she is not fond of math or cooked fruits. So please come up here as we introduce both their kids, Nathaniel and Andrew. And we'll give the rest of the service over to them. Andrew, I'll let you start. This is going to interrupt. Get out of the way.
Well, hi, Riverbird. This is us. I'm Nang. This is Stephanie. Andrew is 2 years old. And right here with me is Nathaniel. Thank you for welcoming us today. And today, I think it's just awesome that we get to come and speak to you guys, specifically about our heart and where God is leading us. Today, it's gonna be both me and Stephanie. We're gonna be sharing about our calling today. So, did you want to take the kids away? Yeah. Okay. I want to start about my calling specifically. This is a picture of us. So just about like 2 months ago, I went on a mission trip, or more called a vision trip, to Thailand and Indonesia. So the purpose of me going there was to see where God is hoping to send us, and also to see what God is doing around the world. So I went to Thailand first, spent about like 9-10 days there, then to Indonesia, spent another 9-10 days there, and got to see wonderful stuff and to see like really what's going on in missions with what God is doing in the world. So after I came back, I talked with Stephanie, and we both debriefed, we talked, and we really processed, and we also prayed and fasted over like where God is wanting us to be overseas. So for me specifically, I want to start with my calling. Like it started when I was very young, when I was called to a relationship with Christ. So I accepted Jesus when I was 12 years old. So when I was 12, in that moment, I just picked up a Bible. It was like just a normal summer day, and I picked up a Bible and I started reading it, and I was like, I was so shocked because the Word of God just became so alive to me. And in that moment too, I also remember my pastor praying. He praying and also preaching during service, like, you know, like God loves the world. You know, John 3:16 isn't just for the people of the church, but it's also for the rest of the world too. So at that moment when I accepted Jesus into my life, I had a desire, and looking back now, I can see that it was God who planted the desire inside me. And that desire was to share Jesus to the world. Like at that time, I specifically wanted to share Jesus to my non-Christian friend. So that was like where I felt like that's where my calling started. And I firmly believe that when God calls us, he doesn't waste anything. Like, I believe that God uses the way we are wired and the way we grew up to affirm our calling into ministry. So growing up, I knew that I was going to be someone different. Right, so in this picture right here, this is me at a festival. We call it the Hmong New Year, which is held like at like a random place every single year. So, but we all come in dressed up in our clothes. So in this picture, my friend is on the left, and my cousin is on my right, and I'm just like here right in the middle, but I'm making like this like weird face, like I don't know how to like take picture. I'm like, I don't know, I'll just try to like look good. Yeah, so I just knew that I was different from people, you know. Another thing was like I'm left-handed, you know, like most of the time whenever I'm doing any kind of sports or doing anything, and people like just give me the chance to do whatever they're doing, like I always kind of have to do like opposite of what people are doing, like playing guitar. Like, okay, this doesn't work for me. I have to flip the guitar upside down in order just to play. So I can actually play guitar on a right-handed guitar, but I just have to flip it upside down. So it's different, right? So and in high school, I remember I was in English class, and I was thinking like, man, my Hmong friends are in the ESL English class, and I'm here just taking a normal English class. Like that's not fair, you know. Like why am I singled out? Why am I so different, right? So, and another thing that I've noticed that how I was different was that when I'm with my Hmong friends, I become more American to them. But then when I'm with like my Caucasian and American friends, I'm more Hmong to them. So for me, I thought of myself as like, you know, like a 2-for-1 combo, having like this Eastern and Western like person inside me. And do you know what like a 2-for-1 combo is kind of like? Yeah, it's a shampoo bottle, you know, shampoo and conditioner. That's what I am, you know. So like growing up, I knew that I was different and I wasn't gonna have a normal life. So because my idea of a normal life was to go to college and then after that find a job, marry a Hmong girl, and just settle down. So that's what I thought of. But of course, you know, like God had such a different plan for me. And so like being different, this was like an affirmation for me to be, for right now that I see it, it was an affirmation for me to be overseas, because I don't really fit the typical normal Hmong American mold. And with the way how God has wired me, I felt like things clicked and things had become more clear once like we sensed that God was calling us to Indonesia. So in Indonesia, we will be reaching out to the Muslim people there through animal ministry. And specifically for me, growing up, I've always had a knack for animals. Like I was always interested and I always loved and was drawn to animals. Like in the backyard that I grew up in, I was always chasing after birds and chasing after rabbits. And even in the weekends when my mom and my dad, they would go to do farming on the side for ginseng, I would just kind of go into the aisle and just like catch the little frogs that was in the little water that was in the tractor aisle. So, and specifically, when I was in the Navy, I remember coming back and visiting my church, and one of my youth member, she made a gesture, and she said like, "Oh, great, you know, at first it was birds, but now you're all excited for squirrels." Because like when I was in the Navy, I also signed up for this program, and then in this program, I get to work along with the Air Force and Army, and for some odd reason in the Army, they had this fascination about squirrel. You know? So it's always like one thing and another, like, hey, squirrel, squirrel. So it's like, my youth member was like, oh, okay, forget it. You're just, first it was birds, now it's squirrels. Though. What else is next, you know? So just feeling different about the way I grew up and being wired the way how I am with my just being attracted and interested in animals, I felt like God is affirming me that Indonesia is the place that He's calling us. Because had I stuck and remained with the Hmong people inside the Hmong community, I don't think I would have ever had the capacity to talk and share Jesus. And lastly, I just want to say that our calling doesn't just encompass me and my wife, but it also includes our kids as well. Like, I think as Christians, we have to break this traditional mindset that it's just the parents who are also who is just called to ministry. From what I see of it, you know, I don't think God sees things the way how we see things at all. I think God uses them specifically in their season of life, just being so young and so little, and He can bring people into relationship with Him. Because as a parent, I often find that relationships is a lot easier to be built and established once I have kids, you know? I can go easily and talk with another parent because we have kids in common. I can, you know, and sometimes my kids would just kind of wander around and just kind of yell such thing as like, "Daddy jump, Daddy jump," like my son Andrew was just saying before. And then and I'll just talk to random strangers or people I don't even know about, and then I can establish relationship that way too. So I think that our kids specifically is also called to missions, especially to Indonesia with us too. And with that, I'm gonna leave it up to my wife to present her part.
Okay, that's fine. Totally fine. Hello? Okay. All right. So, yes, my name is Stephanie Yang. Nang told you a little bit about us. I'm going to speak a little more about my background, what it has to do with calling, and then just calling in general. What does that mean for all of us? I'm also going to speak a little bit about a story of Moses. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I don't think we have time, but I think you're a little familiar with the story of Moses and the burning bush. So remember, Moses is out in the wilderness. He sees this bush on fire, but it's not burning up, so he goes to check it out, and God speaks to him through that burning bush. He gives him a specific call, and Moses pushes back a bit, like, okay, well, what if they don't believe that you sent me? God gives him a sign. He's, okay, thank you. What if they still don't believe that it was you that sent me? God gives him another sign. It goes on for a bit, and then finally Moses is like, please just call someone else. Like, I'm not good at speaking. Like, you know, I'm just not. Please call someone else. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But first, some of my background. So when I was young, calling to me, I thought it was just something for someone going into full-time ministry like a pastor
or a missionary. Those were the only kinds of callings that God gave out. My first memory of missions or calling is lying in bed as a young child and thinking, what if God calls me to be a missionary to China? I'm not sure why China, but I was terrified. I remember being so scared lying in my bed thinking about, what if God calls me to China? I think it was just used a lot back then in the 90s of stories of persecuted Christians or hard places to be, so that thought was in my head, and I was so scared. So calling didn't really have a good feeling inside of me when I was growing up. I was also a bit shy and timid as a child, so I was nervous whenever I thought about that. Here's a picture of me when I was young with my younger brother. I had a pretty fun, happy childhood. I didn't really think about missions or calling that much, except for those few times, or if a missionary came to our church. So it didn't really affect my everyday life. And then fast forward to junior high, what we call junior high there, I think you say middle school here, I was able to go on a short missions trip to Mexico to do a VBS. Again, I was still shy. I was 13 years old. I didn't even speak Spanish. So I don't know how much I really contributed to that trip, but it did open my eyes to something a little bit different. It was a good experience for me. Then I kept living my life. I was a senior in high school, and I decided I'm going to go to college next. What am I going to do? I think almost everyone thinks that. Some people, they have this vision for their future, but I didn't really. And I started to get scared again because I started thinking about this calling. What if I have a calling from God? What if I mess up? What if I don't follow the right calling he wants? What if he tells me the calling and I'm too scared and I don't do it? What if it's something that I feel like I can't do? What if I just can't figure it out and I just choose the wrong path? I was just so torn up and just in this like almost anguish my senior year of high school. I couldn't figure out what to do because for some reason, this is what I thought about calling. I had this idea God only calls people to do things that they would never choose to do on their own. Like, that's it. There was no exceptions to that. Because if it was something you already wanted to do, then God wouldn't have to call you. You'd just do it. So I had this idea that it's going to be something scary. It's going to be something that I don't want to do. And I couldn't figure it out. So finally, I was just like, okay, I'm going to go to college. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to study some things I enjoy for now, and then maybe I'll figure out the calling later. So I studied music and history because it was things that I enjoyed. But then I got to the end of college, and I was, okay, now what do I do? I'm a senior in college. And so my college had this free program where you can stay and get your master's for free if you work for the college, so I did that. I just studied history education. And then toward the end, I'm starting to calm down. I'm starting to think, okay, calling, this isn't a bad thing. I don't need to be scared. Instead of being so like tight and being like, which way to go, and I'm afraid to make the wrong choice, I'm just going to open myself up, and I'm just going to go for it, and then God can tell me, no, that's not the right path, or yes, that is the right path. So I decided to go on a short-term missions, because I had this missions idea in the back of my head, but I was like, I don't know if that is God's voice or not, or if I'm feeling pressured, or if I'm feeling guilty for not doing it. But I decided, let's go for it. So I did a short-term missions trip to Mozambique. There I am, hanging out in a tree with some kids. I stayed there for like a summer, about 4 months, and I was able to help homeschool the kids so that their parents could do more work in the village. I was homeschooled as a child, so I had experience with that. I didn't think that was going to be something I was going to do. I mean, I'm starting to get older here. This is after grad school. I was like, maybe I'll be single my whole life, so that's not going to be something I'll need to worry about. But here I am doing some homeschooling, and I got to see what a missionary really is like. I had kind of this wrong idea of who a missionary is. So this people group they were with was a Muslim tribe. They had these older kids that I helped to homeschool, and it changed my idea of what a missionary is. I thought before pretty much that missionaries were these perfect people. They were evangelizing at all times, and they're not normal. It's like not something that anyone can do. They were like these superhuman, perfect. They had amazing abilities. They never had time for themselves because they're always working. And then they had many converts. But that was not what I saw when I was over there. These people here were normal. I mean, normal for Christians, right? We're not all normal in the world, but they had time for their kids. They hung out in the village. They learned the language. They were spending time with the people. They had been there for years before I came, and they hadn't had any converts yet. But they were still there. They were still doing what God told them to do. Were they still following God's calling, even though it seems like nothing had been going right? Yes. Was it worth it for them, even though there had been no converts? Yes. I was learning more about what a calling could actually be for me. It's not a scary thing. It doesn't have to be a scary thing. Let's look back at Moses and how calling with Moses, with me, and with all of us works together. So what does it mean to be called? Here's just a regular old definition. Merriam-Webster says, calling is a strong inner impulse toward a particular course of action, especially when accompanied by conviction of divine influence. Non-Christians will use the word called. You might hear someone say, I feel called to live my life in service to others, or being in law enforcement is my calling in life, or something like that. But what does it mean for believers when we say that God is calling us or has called us? In the story of Moses, we could say God literally called him. He used his voice, called out to Moses, told him what he wanted to do. And his assignment was very specific: lead my people out of Egypt, right? Nang and I would say that we have a call to missions overseas. We have this assignment from God. That's kind of what it means to be called, this assignment from God for a specific purpose. He's calling out to you and telling you what he wants you to do. But who does God call? Is it only people to be missionaries or to be pastors? No. He has called you. Each of us has a call from God. Not like what I used to think, but we are all called by God. You might think, like, wait a second, the example that we were talking about was Moses, though, one of the most important men, the greatest men to ever live. I'm not like Moses. I don't have a spectacular calling like that, an audible voice from God. Well, let's look at a few more places in the Bible that talks about being called from the New Testament. Romans 1:7, Paul is addressing the believers, and he says, to all those in Rome who are loved by God and called to be saints. After hearing that, you might be tempted to think, like, okay, I'm just called to be a saint. That's it. I'm a believer already. My calling has been fulfilled. Let's look at another verse from 2 Corinthians 1:11. This verse says, to this end we always pray for you, that our God may make you worthy of his calling, and may fulfill every resolve for good and every work of faith by his power, so that the name of our Lord Jesus may be glorified in you, and you in him, according to the grace of our God and the Lord Jesus Christ. So we're not all just called to saving grace, to becoming saints, believers. We're also called to glorify God in our lives. That might look different for different people. For some, it could be a full-time ministry. For others, you might have a full-time secular job. Others, you might be a full-time parent staying at home with your kids. But we're all called to be full-time glorifiers. Doesn't matter what other position that you're in. You do have this calling to be a full-time glorifier of God and Jesus Christ. Just because you haven't been called to what you would think of as full-time ministry doesn't mean you don't have a calling. You're still called to glorify God as much as any missionary in the hardest country. Okay? Before God, we're equal that way. I fall into the trap myself of thinking, like, okay, well, I have this calling for overseas. I'm good. I can, like, relax now, just kind of wait for that calling, and then I'll start fulfilling my calling. But that's not the case. We have a calling right now, not just in the future. You might be wondering what your calling is. Well, this is it. It's to glorify God. That's your calling. You might have more specific callings also that God gives you, but the main one I think that he wants is for us to glorify him. And that's played out many different ways. I don't want anyone to walk out of here thinking that God's call on you is a mystery, like I used to think. Like he's trying to hide something from you. I kind of had that feeling before. Like he wanted to trick me, like, what if I get the wrong answer? And he's just waiting there to see, like, well, all right, let's see what happens. But I don't think that's what's going on. If you're patient, listening, and you're willing for God to show you, he'll show you more specifics of what that calling might look like for you. I remember my dad said this to me when I was a senior in high school, going over, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to get this wrong. And he was like, Stephanie, God's not trying to trick you or hide his will from you. And I do think about that a lot. I think that getting to just the right specifics of your calling is not what is most important to God. He wants you to be willing to accept what he tells you to do. He wants you to be obedient. And he doesn't give us all extremely specific callings with an audible voice. So then what should we do when we don't have that specific calling? We just glorify him. And I think most of you probably have an idea in your head what that might mean for you, a way that you could glorify him. Because there's different ways. But what if you feel inadequate for whatever it is that God's telling you to do? Let's say he gives you a specific calling that would maybe change your life completely from the comfortable way it is right now. Or maybe he's telling you to surrender your finances to him, to be willing to give more than is comfortable for you. Or maybe he's just telling you, hey, I want you to go talk to so-and-so at work tomorrow. Or go visit your neighbor. I want you to build a connection with them. And you feel that you're too weak for that, or you're not, you don't have the significant gifts or talents to do some of these things. Well, let's look at Moses. Remember what happened with Moses? He was telling God, like, well, what if they don't believe this, or what if they don't believe that? And then he finally says, like, okay, I'm just not good enough. He said, oh, my Lord, I'm not eloquent, either in the past or since you've spoken to your servant, but I'm slow of speech and of tongue. Then the Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seen or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. But he said, oh, my Lord, please send someone else. So even Moses himself, he had convinced himself he couldn't follow God's calling. He wasn't good enough. God reassured him, but Moses still had fear for this calling. I said before, Moses is one of the greatest men to ever live, but he was actually just like us. He had the same emotions that we have. When I went to the village in Africa and I saw those missionaries, they were just like me. They were just normal people that God called, and they listened. We all have weaknesses, and we all have failings, but God still calls us. Okay, listen to this verse here. 1 Corinthians 1:26 through 29. For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. He chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. And he chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. And then remember what God said to Moses. Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seen or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. We've all been called to glorify God, but what's God's specific, God's customized calling for your life? Is he calling you to missions? Is he calling you to sacrifice your finances, to reach out to those around you? You might be hesitant and say, I don't know how. I'm weak, I'm scared, I'm untalented. Well, that's good. Remember what God said here in 1 Corinthians. I think this is a good verse. We're going to read it one more time. For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong, and God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. I think God would rather use someone who is weak than someone who is strong, because then God gets the glory for what happens, right? we would be tempted to boast about ourselves, like, look what I was able to do, look what I could do, instead of, I didn't think I could do this, but look what God was able to do and how he was able to use me. God knew that Moses had fear and low self-esteem when it came to speaking, and God knew that before he called Moses, but he still called him. He knows whatever the things are that you might think you're not good at or not good enough for, and he still calls you knowing those. He didn't forget about it when he gave you the calling. That's part of it. He knows who you are. He just wants us to be willing. I think it's a beautiful way that God can use us if we're willing. Let's add one last thing before we get to the end. You don't retire from God's calling like you do from work. Like here in the United States, you usually get to a certain age, you stop working, you're done, relax the rest of your life. Moses, he fulfilled his calling until he died, until the day he died. We're going to keep fulfilling this calling for glorifying God until after we die. We're never going to finish it. It's not something that we're working toward the end. It's something that we can enjoy to do for God. Following God's call can be a wild ride that you don't want to miss. But remember, God's not going to force you to follow his call. It's your choice. But remember this, God will still accomplish his will, whether or not we obey him. But he chooses us to be able to be a part of that fulfillment of his will. Remember how Moses was like, please send someone else to do this? Well, then God chose Aaron instead, and Aaron was the one who did the actual speaking before Pharaoh. It was something God wanted Moses to do, but he said no. But it still happened. God chose someone else. But he does want you specifically to be willing to answer his call and to glorify him. Neng and I, we're still in the process of that specific call that God has for us to go to Indonesia. It's been a long process so far. We're not up to the point of raising funds or anything like that. We're still doing interviews and such. So if you feel like giving to missions, please, what Karina said about giving to the Great Commission Fund to support all of the IWs that the Alliance had, that will be greatly appreciated. Let me pray before we finish. Father, we know that you know each person in here, and we're so thankful, and it's even hard for me to understand, to grasp that you have specific callings for each person here, for each of your followers, each of your disciples. I pray for a willing spirit and openness within each person, including myself, to follow that calling, whether it's the specific one or just glorifying you today. Help us to be willing to ask and listen to what that would be for us today. If you want to show what a call is for 5 years from now, great. That's wonderful. But I'm praying that today everyone will be willing to hear what their calling is for today. Thank you for blessing us and for being willing to use us. I pray for a blessing on everyone here, for their kindness in welcoming us today, and for their endeavors for finding a new pastor soon. I pray for blessings over that as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey, thanks for connecting with us today. We're really glad that you were able to join us on our live stream. If you would like to learn more about us, please visit our website by going to riverwoodalliance.com/online. There you will find all sorts of information about who we are, what we do, and how to connect with us further. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.